Welcome back to Winning Law. I'm attorney David Nguyen with offices in Houston, Texas. Today I'm going to discuss the top 10 questions that people answer incorrectly when completing the DS-160 online visa application. The DS-160 visa application is for people trying to enter the United States as a non-immigrant. This means that the foreign national wants to enter the US temporarily, let's say as a foreign worker on an H-1B or L-1B visa, a fiance, or a visitor, but has no immediate plans to remain in the US permanently. So what we have here is a DS-160 online visa application. I'm going to go through this application. I'm just going to highlight the top 10 questions that I see people generally miss when they're completing this form, and it leads to a lot of issues such as issues at the consular interview during the consular visa interview process, and also leading to denials of that particular visa. So let's go through this application. I did redact some of the information. This way the client's information is not going to be available online. The first question that I see people miss often is other names used. So many times foreign nationals, they have very long names or very complicated names, and as Americans we find it very difficult to pronounce. So what they do is that they may have a nickname or only use a portion of their name. So this means that they have an other names used. Even though it's not their legal name, it is an other name. So this is very important because, let's say for example, immigration decides to contact the US citizen. Let's say this is a fiance petition and the government decides to contact the US citizen petitioner. They ask, do you know this person? The US petitioner may not understand the legal name for that individual because they've been using a nickname all this time. Also, like for social media like Facebook, they may be posting that they're engaged and they may be posting the foreign national's nickname. So this is why the other names used is very important. So just remember, even though it may not be the foreign national's legal name, if it is a name or a version of their name that they're currently using, you want to definitely input it here under other names used. Another issue that I see is related to the home address. Make sure that the foreign national's home address is clearly on here. Sometimes the National Visa Center or the consulate may want to mail documents to the individual, and if this address is not functioning or not working, this may cause an issue. So the next issue that I see is related to social media. So there's a question that asks for, do you have social media presence? This means that if you use an email address, if you use Facebook, WhatsApp, WeChat, anything online, you want to make sure the government knows about it. The reason why this is so important is that, let's say for example, two people, they meet online at Match.com, and the government is going to ask later on, how did you meet? And if the person says we met on Match.com and they fail to include it here under social media platform, they may have issues at the visa interview for lying. So make sure that if you use any social media, even if you're no longer using that social media, so let's say for example you use Instagram but you're no longer using it, you still need to include that information here. Very important, when you register for these websites or these applications, you usually provide that application with your email address. So that's why it's so important that you provide this information and all of it. The next question that I see people miss very often, let's see here, is usually about their visa. Here, have you ever been refused a US visa or been refused admission to the United States or withdrawn an application for admission at the port of entry? So if this is the foreign national's second time applying for a visa, or they applied before for a different type of visa and they were denied and now you're doing this application, you want to make sure that you answer this question thoroughly. The government usually wants to know when that foreign national applied for a US visa, what type of visa it was, the consulate where that person attended, and why it was refused or denied. So a lot of times people, they tend to forget that they previously applied for a visa, or they are very long-winded when they explain why it was denied. So this question, if you clicked on yes, it would request that you explain yourself. And a lot of times the explanation that people give are very long-winded, and it makes the visa officer either confused or suspicious of the current visa application. So make sure that if you had a prior visa denial, maybe you should speak with an attorney to see what is the best way that you can respond to this question. The next question that people tend to miss is this one right underneath. Has anyone ever filed an immigrant petition on your behalf with the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services? So an immigrant petition is not the same as a non-immigrant petition. So an immigrant petition is, has anyone like an employer or a family member ever applied for a permanent green card for you? And they applied with USCIS. So let's say, for example, this person is a fiance. The question is asking, do you have any relatives in the US that previously filed for you, maybe as a sibling petition or a son and daughter petition, or even as a parent petition to live in the United States permanently? So make sure that you know about this information, because once you click on yes, it's going to ask you information like who did it, what is the employer's name, who was the petitioner. So you want to be very careful with that question. And let's go ahead and scroll all the way down to the next question that people tend to miss often, and this is going to be number 6. And it's usually related to children. So if the foreign national has any children, they need to mention all of their children's information here. Another big one that people miss just related to children is if the child is traveling with you. If you select yes, most likely they're going to ask additional questions on when that person is going with you. Another issue related to children is that they're asking for any and all children. This means that if you are already married, if you were previously married and you had stepchildren, that those children's information may be on this application. This also includes children that are not living with you, that are over 18, that are already inside the US, that maybe have passed away. They're asking for any children or stepchildren that you may have had. So you want to make sure that you enter in all of the information, even if you have to add addendum pages. The next issue that I see people make often with this question is related to their prior employment information. So if the government is asking for the last 10 years or 5 years of employment history, you have to make sure that you fill it in completely. So when you have gaps in your employment history, that leads immigration to be suspicious of your visa application. So if you were unemployed for a certain amount of time, you want to make sure that you list out your unemployment dates. Another issue as it relates to work and unemployment is that I see sometimes people feel like, hey, I have to put down that I'm working or else the government is not going to like it and I'm going to get denied this visa. I 100% recommend you do not lie on this application. If you are not currently working, or if you haven't been working the full 5 years or 10 years, you don't lie about it. Make sure you fill this out completely because the government can verify this information. The next question that I see people have a lot is related to, let's see here, this should be number 8. Is here where it says, have you ever belonged to, contributed to, or worked for any professional, social, or charitable organization? So contributed to may mean like you gave a donation. So many people, they're involved with the church, like they are a member of a church or other nonprofit organization. This is what this question is asking you for. So if you ever belong to a church, they need to put down yes. Next question that people have issues about is these two questions. Do you have any specialized skills or training, such as firearms, explosives, nuclear, biological, or chemical experience, and have you ever served in the military? Some countries, foreign nationals, especially men, are required to join the military for a brief period of time. And so if they join the military or get trained to be part of the military, they need to answer this question yes, and then they will have an opportunity to explain their experience. And the last question that I see people miss often happens to be, I believe it's related to this one where it talks about communism. Let me see where this is at. Here. Are you a member of or affiliated with the Communist or other totalitarian party? So people that live in China and Vietnam or another country like maybe Russia may have to answer yes to this question. And this can mean something as little as in China, usually if you are in school, you may be asked to pay a small amount so you can be part of the Communist Party. And this happens when people are doing very well in school. They're asked to join this Communist Party as part of the government. And this is very common for people in China. Or people that work for the government, they usually have to enter this in as yes and explain themselves. So these are the top 10 questions that I usually see on the DS-160 that people tend to miss because they're not sure how to answer those questions. So just make sure that you answer it correctly.
So again, thank you for watching Winning Law. I'm attorney David Nguyen, and we hope that we have made immigration easier to understand.